You good to go live then?
Yep, let me know when we're live.
Alrighty, that's should be us now live now. Alright, so hello there, Sinthe. Today we're debating utilitarianism, yes?
That's what you wanted, right?
Yep.
That's what you asked for.
Yep. So I suppose
Cool, welcome.
given you're the utilitarian, we could start off with, what exactly do you mean by utilitarianism? Because, I see
Cool.
that the
I got
standard
you, yeah.
definition is like, maximization of preferences, but some people mean like, slightly
Mm,
different things there. What a sort
not
of
exact, not exactly. So the standard definition of utilitarianism is just the maximization of any definition of utility, so long as it's impartial. There are people who believe in like a diminishing returns theory on how much utility maximization matters for people who are more worse off or better off, right? And there are some people who believe that like it's preferences we're maximizing. I think the common view is about not preferences, but instead about it's like hedonic utilitarianism, which is what we're maximizing is based on like good feelings minus bad feelings. And then there's the objectivist theorist view, right? I take the objectivist theorist view. I think that we have a vector-based version of utility. I think that the preference and hedonic distinction can be collapsed down into two different things on that vector. One of them is going to be good experiences, ones that drive you towards them, right? I think there's something underlying of that, of like what makes up an experience preferable, which is that good experience you get from it. And I think there's something underlying that makes an experience worth avoiding or dispreferable, right? Which is the bad feeling that happens. That's my definition of utilitarianism. That's what I hold on to. There are other things that I think are part of the objective list, but I think that those two things alone, like one of the things is truth, obviously. Those things alone, though, I think are the most important, right? Maximization of good feelings and the avoidance of bad feelings.
Okay, so yeah, I get that. Maximization of good feelings, avoiding of bad feelings. So could you compare utility between two people, would you say?
Sure. Yeah.
Alright, how would you go about this? Is there some sort of unit of utility?
Well, yeah, the vector would be it, right? So that's just the length of I guess it's just the length of the vector would be what's morally valuable in a vector-based version of utility. If what you view is instead like the summation of the vectors, I think that could work too. So just as long as you like just take the amount of happiness they're getting minus the amount of suffering they're having, and I'm using those as shorthand, but that could give you, I think, a good estimate of utility.
Oh, we can just use that for the purpose of this discussion then. So how would you go about measuring the amount of happiness and the amount of suffering?
So if you wanted to measure it, the ways you do it are basically the same way you measure anything. You abduct from evidence, and you could possibly be wrong about it, right? But you can come to the most likely option given the evidence you have. So if I see somebody's like crying, it's very unlikely that they're feeling very happy. If I see somebody's about to kill themselves, it's very unlikely from their perspective they feel like their life is worth living. It doesn't seem like from their perspective their life is preferable to go on, right? So these are ways we can abduct from evidence to figure out if somebody's feeling bad or feeling good, and using these heuristics, these ways we can make guesses. I think then we can act in the best possible way that we can from our limited understanding of the world, our limited amount of knowledge.
Okay, are you familiar with the different categories of data?
I'm familiar with a lot of different categorization systems for data, but I'm not sure with what you're talking about particularly now.
So my categorization that I will go over here is nominal data, so that would be something like we are currently debating. Ordinal data, that would be like a ranked list, right? And then there's two different types of cardinal data, so there's interval data and ratio data. So interval data would be something like temperature, where you can say that 10 degrees Celsius is 10 degrees more than 0 degrees Celsius, but you couldn't say that 10 degrees Celsius is twice as hot as 5 degrees Celsius, right? But like a ratio measure would be something like length, where you could say that 10 centimeters is twice as long as 5 centimeters. It makes sense to say that.
Why are you calling the first one nominal data? Like, why is it data in name only?
I mean, that's just what I've got off, like, the Wikipedia for types of data. It's just called nominal data.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just not sure why that would fit into the category of nominal data.
Well, it's just like true statements. It's just like, stuff that you'd survey someone on. Like, I live in Scotland. That's a data, right? That's a
Just
datum, I
truth
should say.
propositions in general, you're saying are nominal data?
Well, it's just, yeah, it's like, it's stuff like I live in Scotland. We are currently debating. We are live streaming on YouTube. It's stuff like that. It's just individual data, right? It's just stuff like that.
Do you think moral claims are truth propositions?
Yes, I mean sometimes at least.
I'm sure that sometimes they are, right? That like moral language can be used in that way. I'm just asking, do you think that like When you're talking about what you're saying is a moral claim, is what you're saying is a moral claim, a thing which is truth apt.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just describing to you the categories of data.
No, I'm saying when you make a moral claim, because we both know that we both made moral claims in the past, right? We all use moral language. When you're using the moral language, are you talking about truth apt propositions? Do you think that what you're talking about is like just an emotive, like boo, bad thing, or do you think it's something that has a fact of the matter, like a truth maker to it?
If it's an actual moral proposition, then it's got to be truth apt, or else it's not a it's not a proper proposition, right? It's just me stating an opinion. But I don't see what this has to do with the categories of data. Like, what does this have to do with the categories of data?
Well, opinions can also be truth apt. So,
but what does this have to do with the categories of data?
Because you said that all truth apt propositions would be examples of nominal propositions, right? I'm just trying to get into like what the truth maker is for moral claims, because we're talking about utilitarianism.
Well, okay, it's what it means to make a truth proposition. It isn't quite relevant, right? I mean, unless you think that utility is a nominal data type, right?
I think that whether or not an action is moral or immoral would be a truth apt proposition, and you agree.
Right, but to determine whether or not something is moral or immoral, surely that's not nominal, because is a util a nominal data type?
So utils being a nominal data type would be irrelevant, because I'm only saying the maximization
well, it's
of
perfectly
utility.
It's perfectly relevant, because if we want to...
Well, I'm actually explaining. Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second. Whoa.
If we want to maximize utility... If we want to maximize utility, we need to know what a util is.
Are you just... Well, hold on. So there's an issue with the question, which is I'm saying we should maximize utility, right? That's the morally good action. Utility maximizing actions are the morally good one. That's going to be either true or false. Am I maximizing utility or am I not maximizing utility? If I'm maximizing utility in the world state, the moral valence of it is that the world is very, very, very high in utility. That could be maximizing it, or it could be the case that there's some better option than that. Or it could be the case the world's very low in utility, right? And I'm still doing the best possible option, right? So the amount of utility is not what makes it maximal. The amount of utility within the scope of possible actions is what makes it maximal. And there's only one possible maximal action generally. You could pose hypotheticals where they're actually equal actions, but in the real world there's only one that's maximal. And in these views, either it is the case that you're maximizing utility, right, or it isn't. That makes it nominal, right? It makes it truth apt proposition. It's either true or false. That something's moral or immoral. And the reason this is relevant is because if we're talking about what's moral and what's immoral, then the truth makers are relevant.
Right, but to even determine whether or not you're maximizing utility, you need to know what a util is, right? To determine that you are indeed maximalizing it, right?
Yeah. You don't have to know what the actual utility values of things are, but you could have an idea of what a util is, right?
So you just have an idea of what a util is. You don't actually know.
Well, I don't think you know anything, right, in the hard sense.
Do you know that? Do you know that you don't know anything?
No, I don't know that. That's what part of I don't know anything. Do you not understand?
So do you know that? Do you know that utilitarianism is correct?
I don't know anything.
So you don't know that utilitarianism is correct. So then, what is this debate?
What part of you don't know anything? Do you not? We can talk about things other than we know to have a debate about, right?
Well, then you aren't proposing that you are in fact correct.
Yes, I am.
But then so you know that you're correct.
So you can propose that you're correct because you believe it, not because you know it, right? There are
certain
things that you believe to be true that you don't know.
So it's just a battle of I believe this, I believe this. How could we ever come to a conclusion?
Because we use evidence. We can use evidence to come to the
what
most
relevance is evidence then if it's all just going to be beliefs?
So the issue is we can both have justifications for our beliefs, and one of us can have a stronger justification, but it could still be the case that either of us could be wrong, right?
But how could you even determine the strength of a justification if there is no such thing as knowledge?
So you don't need knowledge to determine the strengths of justifications. You could have beliefs.
What does it mean to justify something if not to demonstrate its truth?
So you can justify something through evidence that doesn't necessarily demonstrate it's true. So
but what does that do then?
What does it do? I'm telling you. You have to stop interrupting constantly. So the answer to your question, right, is if we want to know, right, the one thing you have more reason to believe it. You could still be wrong about, like, say, for example, the number of atoms in the sun, and there's like evidence of like probably about the correct number, right? But we wouldn't get that like anywhere close to true if we actually guessed. However, there's really strong evidence against some numbers of atoms.
You reject truth.
You said there was one.
How can you know that we're far from truth if you don't know what truth is?
Hold on.
You have no definition of truth.
This is a complicated subject, and I'm trying to help you out, right? So if I say there's one.
Do you know that's complicated?
I don't know anything. What part of that do you not understand?
So you don't know that's complicated. Why do you say it?
I say things that I don't know for sure all the time, and so do you.
Oh, I know that for sure, yeah.
Have you ever said anything that you don't know for sure?
Not if I'm in a debate where I'm proposing that, yes, my position is correct and your position is incorrect.
Are you in a debate right now?
Yeah. I know that for a fact.
Could you be hallucinating?
I don't believe that I am. No.
You don't believe that you are, right? But are you? Could you be hallucinating?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, so you could be possibly wrong about this?
But there's definitely some things, like when I'm debating, I debate things that I know for certain are true. Like, I'm not debating what I am debating right now. To suggest that
Can you go ahead and answer the question?
To suggest, if I were to claim that I'm not debating right now, that would contradict myself.
Can you answer my question?
And contradictions are false, so I know that I definitely am. I know that I am debating right now, because contradictions are false.
Well, you can't know something for sure just because it would contradict with one of your statements, and I want you to answer my question.
Do you know that P and not P cannot both be the case?
So that wouldn't be, so saying that I know that P and not P, right? I don't think you know that, but if I assume P and not P can't be the case, then that wouldn't
it's not an assumption.
mean that P is true or that not P is true, based on me knowing that two things contradict.
You can know things without...
However, you dodged my question. Wait. You dodged my question. I'd love an answer to it.
Which question?
The question was, in the case of this debate, you could be hallucinating, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that means that you could be wrong, right?
Wrong about what?
About the fact that you're debating. You said you were, right? I'm saying you could be wrong about that, right?
Well, it's a presupposition, right?
It's a presupposition that you could be wrong about, right?
I mean, what would it even mean to be wrong about that?
Therefore, we don't know it. We just have good reason to believe it. And that's the same thing that I'm doing with my beliefs.
Do you think you can know nothing, though? Right? You think you can know literally nothing?
Yep.
Right, so it's just a battle of beliefs. I think you can know things for certain.
I'm sorry, just to address the first point, you agree, right, that any claim that you made in this debate, right, ultimately will rest upon presuppositions that could be false?
Nope, not every claim.
Really? Can you give me an example of a claim that doesn't rest upon a presupposition that could be false?
Law of identity.
How do you know the law of identity is true?
A is A. Like, to try and dispute it, you'd contradict yourself.
So why do you think that the things which would you contradict yourself by disputing are true?
Because the law of non-contradiction.
So why do you think the law of non-contradiction is true?
It's a prerequisite for truth, right? That's what it means. That's what it means for something to be true.
So it's a presupposition.
It's not a presupposition. That's just what it means to be true.
It means to be true is that it doesn't contradict.
Yeah, with anything.
What theory of truth are you operating on?
The true one. I know it's true.
I could give you things that don't contradict themselves, right? Which are obviously not true.
Right, they're not internally contradictory, sure, but they might contradict with reality, right?
So you think
if you dig deep enough, right, you're going to have some false metaphysical proposition or whatever, something like that.
Reality contradicts with these beliefs, right? Why is it not the case that reality is false and instead the beliefs are false?
What the fuck would it mean for reality to be false? Reality is by definition true. That's what it means for something to be objective, is that it pertains to reality.
Yeah. Firstly, that's ridiculous. Correspondence theory of truth is like a joke. If you want me to explain to you why it's wrong, right? So
something is objective if it corresponds to reality.
Hold on. If I ask you how many...
What do you think objective means?
Stop. Hold on. Stop. Are you drinking or something? Like, what do you think it means for like the statement, a unicorn has one horn to be true? What do you think that would mean?
Well, that would be analytically true, right? Because by definition, a unicorn does have one horn.
Does that correspond with reality?
No, because that's just about definitions.
Exactly,
it's tautological.
So you were wrong, right? So we understand why you were wrong now, right?
What makes that wrong? How does that change? How does that make me wrong?
No.
What am I wrong about?
Does it correspond with reality, and yet it's still true?
It's tautological.
It's
not analytically true, right? It's synthetically true. No, sorry, it's not synthetically true. It's analytically true.
Okay, so you understand why things cannot correspond with reality and yet still be true, right?
It depends what you mean by true, right? I'm talking about when I'm talking about like when I said what I said specifically was objectivity means that it corresponds with reality. So if something can't be real, something can't correspond with reality and be false. That makes no sense.
Well, the issue is you're affirming the consequence. So just because something can't contradict with reality and be false does not mean that it's the case that
something can't correspond with reality and be false.
Okay, so just because something can't correspond with reality and be false does not mean that something can't not correspond with reality and also not be false, right? So here's an example. The claim about the unicorn, right? That doesn't correspond with reality, and yet it's not false. It's a true statement. Statements about math would also be the case.
Okay.
Right? So if I said a statement like 2 + 2 = 4, right? Even if there was no universe, right? The statement itself is still analytically true, as you described it, right? The statement is still true, right? In virtue of things other than correspondence with reality.
But I don't care about any of this. I don't care about analytic shit, right? It's irrelevant to the debate.
it's relevant to the debate because of
The,
the fact that you were using an
tautologies
argument.
are entirely irrelevant. I was talking about
Super
objectivity.
relevant.
If something is
Morals-
objective, it has to
no,
be
but it's so
true.
relevant. Hold on, but it's so relevant because
It's
what we're talking about
hardly.
with morals. Hold on, what we're talking about with morals doesn't have to correspond with reality. They can correspond with something else, some other truth maker.
If it doesn't correspond with reality, you're just talking about words and how they relate to each other. You're not talking about anything real.
I can talk about things that are very real that aren't necessarily just that aren't necessarily correspondence with reality, right? There are things that are real outside of that.
Does your morality
here's the-
correspond with reality? Does your morality
think
correspond with reality?
I think that my morality is true, but based on a different truth maker than correspondence. I think that the truth maker.
So it doesn't correspond with reality.
I think that it's true based on a different truth maker.
But so it doesn't correspond with reality.
I just answered this question like 3 times. Like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't have to.
Okay, cool. So then you're
It's a moral claim.
saying it doesn't correspond with reality. It's not real. It's not real morality. It's not
You
true
think
morality.
You think morals are a part?
It's irrelevant.
It's true, right? I just told you several times. It's
So-
true based on
so
a
you
different
think
truth maker.
it's-
You didn't understand that.
So you think it's analytically true?
I think it's
you
true
think-
based on a different truth maker than analytic either, right? I can tell you the.
What is the
exact
different
maker
truth
if you
maker
like.
then?
Sure, I'll go over it. So I think if you investigate the way we use moral propositions, the way we talk about morals, the most reasonable truth maker is going to be impartial reason, right? So in layman's terms, I think that when someone says something like, when he did the Holocaust, Hitler did something extremely immoral, they should be treated like they're saying that there is a reason which at any successive stage of inquiry will still hold that Hitler shouldn't have done the Holocaust. I think in actual practice, what people actually think in their head is probably something closer to like boo, bad thing. But that's that's just mostly because of the fact that most language is intuitive, and I don't really think that I care about that or that anyone really should care about that. I think what we should really care about is what we have impartial reason to do.
So it's not analytic or synthetic. It's impartial reason. So there is a reason at which, in any successive stage of inquiry, Hitler should not have done the Holocaust.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean?
Which part of that was confusing for you?
The whole thing. At any successive stage of inquiry. Let's start there. What the hell does that mean?
So if you were to inquire about the thing, right, and go through the process of what's called reflective equilibrium, right? If you were to think about the thing and over time reflect on your moral intuitions, right, and try to find the general rule set that you think is best capturing what we have impartial reason to do, then I think that would come to the conclusion that Hitler shouldn't have done the Holocaust. I think you can do this by taking a look at your set of moral intuitions and withering away the parts of this intuition which are irrational, and holding on to the parts of it which are rational.
So it's just belief then?
I don't know what you mean by that.
It's just pure intuition. You said you just reflect on your intuitions and eventually you come to...
That's how we gain any information about the world. It's based on
It's not intuitions. Not necessarily.
It's based on seemings. Yeah. Well, I don't know what's the issue with using seemings to come to conclusions on something. This is what we do with math, right?
You're not coming to the conclusion. Mathematics, I don't know about mathematical epistemology. I've been asking about that for some people, but like...
Did you do the thing you
that's
did to
beside.
Red with me where you turned my volume way down, or are you just like...
Yeah,
a freak?
because you were being loud.
I was being loud by like not letting you interrupt me.
Yeah, that was loud. I didn't like it, so I turned you down. So then you just
So
have
you seem
belief.
Like remarkably bad faith. I don't know what you seem like.
I don't care what you think about me.
Turning the other person down. People can barely hear me in your audience.
I don't care.
I think that your goal in this discussion isn't to have like a productive discussion on like the facts of the matter. I think that your goal in this is just like.
Oh, Sinthe, the
spin rhetoric around
the good
people.
faith debater comes out of the woodworks, eh?
I don't know. I think I've been pretty good faith here.
False.
Really, what have I been bad faith about?
Oh, so you think that false means something there?
I would assume so.
Do you know that?
I don't know anything. What part of that do you not understand?
No, so then why did you even respond then? If you don't
Because
know
I
anything,
think
stop speaking.
You think you can respond to things without knowing them for sure?
I mean, you have to know something in order to, you have to know
Seems like you're out of your
something.
depth in this conversation. You should revisit this once you've done more reading. Then you
Nah.
won't have to like do bad faith shit and like interrupt the other person and turn them down when it starts going poorly.
You were
for
interrupting me. That's why I turned you down.
No, I wasn't.
You were.
No, I wasn't. You actually
you can look
you
it
actually
back.
just agreed earlier. You agreed earlier, right? That you were interrupting me and you turned me down because you didn't like me not letting you interrupt me.
Ugh.
Maybe you're
Here comes the good
correctly.
here comes the good faith debater, eh?
I've been as good faith with you, I think, as a reasonable person should be. I think the fact that I'm being kind of mean to you now is pretty justified.
Is that so?
Yep.
I mean, if you just think it, then it's not a proposition, right? You don't have to respond to it.
That's not true.
If you're just thinking things, then they're not propositions, are they? They're
That's not true.
just kind of I feel like it.
Do you think that
Just opinion.
statements about feelings would be well? Firstly, I'm not even saying just I feel like it, right? I'm saying, but even granting this, if I would just pretend it was the case that I was just feeling like a certain way about something, that would still be a proposition.
But then the proposition is I feel this way. What do I have to respond there? What is the argument? Like, yeah, you feel that way. I agree, you feel that way.
Sorry. So
what is the proposition?
Sorry. So it is a proposition.
Oh my god, yeah, great faith there. Yeah, it is a proposition. The proposition is, I feel this way. I agree that you feel that way. But what does that mean? Why do I have to respond to that you feel that way? Why do I have to respond to the fact that you're offended?
You said it wasn't a proposition.
Why do I have to respond to the fact that you're offended?
I don't know what you're talking about. What thing am I being offended over?
I feel this way, right?
In bad faith. That's a statement about reality, not my feelings.
So what is your feelings on that matter? If you're not offended by it, why are you acting so offended about it?
So is this going to be like, lol, you mad, bro? Because you lost the argument on the substance, so now you're trying to like rhetoric.
I have seen many of your debates, bro. You do every single time you go into, you're mad, right?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're accusing me of being mad, you sound kind of mad.
Yep, there it is again. Yeah. So what is your feelings on the matter then?
That was the point, right?
What is your feelings on the matter? If your proposition is that you feel some way, what is the proposition?
My feeling isn't it's not my proposition.
About me being mean to you. What is the? So you didn't have a proposition then?
I did have a proposition.
So what is the proposition?
Do you think that's the only possible proposition?
What is the proposition then?
The proposition is that you're being bad faith, right? You're operating in bad faith because you turned the other person's volume down so you could have an easier time interrupting them.
No, because we were in, you were believing it, and then it was, well, I believe it, so it's my opinion on the matter. Well, Zulu, opinions are still propositions. It's like, yeah, the proposition is, I believe this, that, and the other thing. But that's not, it's not a proposition I actually have to respond to.
Can I give you, like, future debate advice?
Go ahead.
Like a pro tip?
Go ahead.
Don't go into debates drunk.
I feel like it, though. It's fun.
You know what? I take that back. Actually, every debate that you go into until you change your positions, make sure you're super drunk.
Well, dude.
Okay. So I don't really think you posed a single counter argument to utilitarianism. I think that the best argument.
Oh no, because you have no knowledge on anything. That's the ultimate defeat of your ethical proposal.
What was I like? What did I have like a insufficient justification for?
Everything, because you don't know anything. You said that you do not know that utilitarianism is the case.
You can't know nothing, like the entry-level philosophy statement that.
Do you know that utilitarianism is the case?
I don't. Do I?
You do not know that utilitarianism is the case.
Nobody knows anything, right? There's not a counter argument.
So then you have no argument.
I said that's not
your proposition is not truth apt.
So my proposition is truth apt, even if I don't know.
So it's truth apt in that you think it because you have intuition that it's true. And that makes it truth apt.
Do you think that?
Does it?
Sorry. Do you think that a truth apt proposition means the proposition is true?
Yeah, fair enough. Is your proposition true then? You don't think that it's truth apt though.
Look.
Right? You don't think that it's truth apt. You don't think that it can correspond to reality.
I do think it is. I do think it's truth apt, right?
Okay, but you think that just intuition makes something truth apt.
What you've done is hold on. So if I haven't done a sufficient job proving that I don't know anything, I've certainly done a sufficient job proving you don't know jack shit. You know nothing about this subject. Holy shit.
Is that so? I mean, you can laugh all you want, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it so.
Okay, what I'm telling you, right, is that a truth apt proposition just means the proposition has the property of being able to be true or false.
Yeah. I misspoke. Is misspeaking suddenly like the ultimate defeat? I'll tell you what is an ultimate defeat. The fact that you yourself claim that you do not know that you are correct.
Oh no, I don't know anything. Who cares, right? What's the issue with that?
Then there is no debate. It's just about I intuit this, I intuit that.
Right now?
What is there to debate over? If it's just I intuit this, I intuit that. But it's just all intuition, right? Because that's what you think it is. You think it's intuition all the way down.
The fact that everything is founded off of seemings doesn't really matter. As long as me and you have seemings we can agree upon, then we can talk about from those agreed upon seemings, what can we deduce from there, right?
So if two people agreed that contradictions are valid, would that suddenly make them valid? No, it wouldn't.
No.
Exactly.
No, but it means the process of
Do you know that it wouldn't make them valid?
It means the process of discussion, two people can resolve disputes, right? Based off of the premise that the contradictions are valid, right? And if they do this, they'll both come to the same position, which is trivialism.
But this is talking about how people come to agree on things. This isn't talking.
I'm aware.
Right, so you're not actually making an argument that you're correct.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
I've made
You're just
the
saying,
argument
well,
based on the
people
evidence
might
that
agree
we're-
with me.
No, I think that you agree on all of the evidence I need for my conclusion.
Go on.
You agree that the world around you is generally as it seems to be, right? You agree that you're not generally hallucinating.
Yeah.
Okay? So then what you perceive in the world would be evidence of how things actually are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could be wrong about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you still believe the world is a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So just because you don't know something for sure doesn't mean that you can't have beliefs about it, and doesn't mean that those beliefs can't be backed up by the evidence.
Right.
Okay.
So then how do we go from this to utilitarianism?
Sure, with the arguments that I was making earlier about what like the truth makers are based on how people use the moral language, right, and based on what we should take it to be, I can give you reasons why any alternative system, right, that's more complex than utilitarianism would be something which would have premises that are worth withering away. Like one example would be egoism.
So I mean,
right?
we
It's got one
we-
slightly more complex premise than utilitarianism, which is the idea that instead of maximizing utility, you should maximize utility for a self, a specific self, which is yourself. Right?
I mean, we could
That's-
we could
and I can
go
also give you
we
why
could go
systems
into
therefore
that,
are
right?
not worth- Yes, we could.
We could go into your arguments as to, okay, everything around us is as it seems, therefore utilitarianism. So we got kind of stumbled up there on the category of data that utils are.
You're using
So you're...
we very loosely.
Oh, no, I've got the flow right here, bro. You were saying that the util... A util is the... A util is the length of the vector, or some other thing, right? There are some way to calculate it based on the vector, right? Which is made up of the amount of happiness and the amount of suffering. So how do you measure the amount of happiness or the amount of suffering? Well, you abduct from evidence, and you come to the likely option. But how exactly do you go about quantifying this? I want you to quantify right now anything about the amount of happiness or the amount of utility. Just measure any amount of happiness or utility for me.
I can measure through our behaviors in this conversation that I'm feeling way happier than you are right now. That would be one example. I could see.
Well,
that,
that's just a greater than,
dogs
right?
crying.
That's just a greater than. That's not a quantity. How can you quantify
I have-
it?
So are you asking?
How many units more
I don't
happy
know
are
if
you
you
than
want-
me?
So I don't need to know the exact amount of units, but I can have good estimates.
How can you come to any estimate? Just enlighten me.
I would say that. So we can come to estimates based on things like qualities, right? By quality adjusted life years, right? The way they do in some fields like sociology. We can come to estimates based on like looking at the emotional response two people are giving. We can start ordering a bunch of people up and see how happy they are, and we can take a look at how happy they are acting relative to each other, and we can see that one person is like maybe seems to be about twice as happy, or like maybe even
They seem to be about twice as happy.
Yeah,
What does that
exactly.
even
So you can
mean?
use the-
What does that
does it
mean?
for somebody to be twice as happy?
Yeah, what does that mean?
So have you ever felt happiness?
Yeah, I felt happiness.
Okay. Imagine twice the amount of that.
That makes no sense, right? It's just
Imagine, okay. Have you ever
because
felt more happy in some
here's
cases than
the
others,
thing,
but still felt happy in
Sinthe.
both?
Satisfaction is ordinal. That's my claim. My claim is it's ordinal.
Okay. It doesn't. So I'll
You have to
give you an
demonstrate that
example,
it's
right?
a ratio level
I'm
measure.
I know I'm doing it. Most people from their own experiences can like make or they can do the mental math necessary to like figure things out, right? But in your case, have you ever felt two cases where one you feel happier than another case?
Yep.
In both cases, you still felt mostly happy.
Yep.
Okay. Have you ever felt a case where you feel way happier than the other case?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can feel way happier, right?
Mhm.
Even if we just had those two experiences, we could imagine I'm feeling one amount of happiness here, and I'm feeling way more this time. Or alternatively, we could have an experience where we're like, I'm feeling happy here, and I'm feeling a little bit happier here.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you can imagine what it's like to feel twice as happy. You're not
No, 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 no.
on the dot.
Well,
You can
everything
imagine-
you've said so far fits into an ordinal ranking.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, because it would have to be blank spaces.
A is in A experience, I'm way happier than I am in Z experience. That's
So if I
perfectly
had
applicable in an ordinal scale.
No, it isn't.
It is.
I'll explain to you why. Right? So
Go on.
let's imagine we have two experiences, right? You've had only two experiences in your entire life. Obviously, it's ridiculous hypothetical, but just for the sake of understanding things and making it simple, it's I think easier. Imagine those two experiences. One, you're only a little bit happier than the other one, right? Say you have A, and then you have experience B, which is slightly better than A, right? And now imagine another situation where you've only ever had two experiences ever, right? One is you're having experience A, right? And then one is you're having way better than experience A, and we'll call that one B, right? So we have these two situations, both of which have situations where you have different amounts of happiness in both cases, right? And ordinally, it should be the case that your life is of equal quality in both. You should be like, it should be arbitrary which one of these puts you better off, right? But clearly the one where B is way happier than A is one where you're better off. You can imagine what it's like to feel very happy, and you can imagine what it's like to feel only kind of happy.
Right, I don't know, you know, I have never experienced, well, today I feel twice as happy as yesterday. I've never experienced that, so I don't know where you're getting this from, right? Your hypothetical is just, right, we assume this person feels twice as happy here as they did there, right? But to feel twice as happy, you need to have a 0 point. Do you agree with that?
To feel twice as happy, you need to have a 0 point?
Just in any amount, just in any data measure. If you want to have multiplication, like if you want to have thing X and then this thing is twice X, you need to have some sort of 0 point, right?
I agree that you have to have a 0 point to know that, like, exactly where the twice as much lies. But even if you didn't have a 0 point, you could still have like a non-ordinality to it.
Well, no.
I think there is a 0 point, so I don't think there's an issue for my theory. I think the 0 point's pretty.
Okay,
high.
so you think there is a zero utility? You think that's a thing? So what is zero utility?
It would be when your life is the world's no better off with you in it or without you in it, right? You in particular, if you wanted to just imagine yourself as the only person in the universe, you would say that like you are completely completely neutral. If you were being rational in that situation, you'd be completely neutral on if you should kill yourself or not, right? You'd have a life which is like neither worth living nor not worth living. Zero utility. Happiness minus suffering equals 0. Not, I mean, you're feeling relatively neutral.
So do you think utility is with respect to the world, or do you think it's with respect to what you feel?
I think it's with respect to the world.
Okay, so then you just don't know. Utility just isn't, you know, satisfaction or happiness.
Yes, it is.
So satisfaction or happiness are with respect to the world. The world is feeling this happiness for you.
Well, the universe has people in it, and those people that are part of the universe feel happiness.
Okay, then they feel happiness in themselves, not the universe feeling happiness about people.
I'm sorry, am I in the universe? Am I part of the universe?
Yeah, but it's not outside of you feeling happiness about you. It's you feeling happiness.
Outside the universe which is doing it?
No, it's not outside of you. That's what I said, not outside the universe. I didn't say outside the universe, you idiot.
Well, it's outside of me.
Right, okay, so you think it's outside of you. You think outside of you is where happiness comes from. You think that's where your utility comes from.
It comes from both.
It comes from outside the universe and inside. What is utility?
No.
What do you think utility is?
I'm not the entire universe. You're confused.
What do you think utility is?
So I think the utility is based on the just the simple vector-based version of it, right? Just to make it as simple as possible. Happiness minus suffering, right? And we can imagine this for everyone impartially, not just me. It happens outside of me too. I'm sure that at some point you felt happy, right? Not during this discussion, but at some point I'm sure.
So then what would it mean for me to feel zero utility?
I just told you. I mean that you would think, like, if you were acting rationally, you would think to yourself, I am completely neutral on whether or not I should kill myself. And if somebody said they were going to kill me, I wouldn't even act to prevent it because I know that I'll have zero utility for my entire life, right?
But then they are still alive, right?
And yet they are still alive, you're asking?
Yeah, so they are still alive, right?
Yes.
They have to be alive to think this, right?
Yes.
So then they're necessarily acting, or are they asleep?
They could be acting. Not necessarily,
right.
But they could be acting.
So they could be, you know, purposefully non-acting.
I have no idea what you mean by that.
Like, you know, they are seeking some sort of end.
Oh, you're trying to roll argumentation ethics. I see what
No, I'm not.
Okay,
This is no, I'm not. This is
okay.
This is the action axiom.
Okay, so you are trying to like build out the action axiom.
Yeah, they are acting, or are they not acting?
They're not necessarily acting, but they could be.
But if they're not acting, what are they doing? How could they think without
Why
acting?
not be doing anything?
What do you mean by not doing anything?
They could just. Well, you think action is purposeful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then they could be doing something non-purposeful. They could just be thinking without wanting to.
Okay, so they are thinking. So they're doing something non-purposeful. Can you give me an example?
I just told you. Sometimes I think about things without really wanting to. Sometimes they just pop into my head, and I'm like, oh my god. Why
Right, so it's just reflexes then.
So boring.
But if they're just being reflexive, then they're not, you know, actually thinking. They're not contemplating shit, right? They're like asleep.
You can think without wanting to?
You can have thoughts pop into your head, like you can dream, right?
Yeah.
You can be in a coma. I think you can be alive without acting, but I don't think you can purposefully not act.
I didn't say purposefully.
Right, but then if there is no purpose to it, then there is no utility. Because utility is all about satisfaction, and you need to have action to have that. You need to have choice. You need to have preference.
You can have a preference without having an action.
Oh, how?
You could have you could have something that would drive you towards doing something, but with no capability to ever drive yourself towards it, right?
What do you mean by okay? Right. Let's just focus in on this. Let's just focus in on this.
Hold on. Yeah.
Let's focus in on it.
Let me finish.
Hold on.
My sentence. You hold on. I'm in the middle of a sentence. Okay? So imagine. I don't know what you. That's a really weird laugh. So
I don't care.
Imagine you're like a brain, right? And you're hooked up to inputs. You couldn't control anything going on according to these inputs. You have no choice in the matter, right? All you can do is sit there and experience things. There can be some experiences that would be pretty bad. Like you can imagine like an evil demon who's got your brain hooked up to a computer, wiring in bad experiences. They're wiring in like a simulation of hell or something, and you have no choice in the matter. Or it could just be like it could feel like they're doping you up with heroin 24/7. It could feel like there's like a lot of good experiences you're having, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, but I'm not concerned with the philosophy of a brain, right? I'm concerned with the philosophy of a human.
Okay.
And a human cannot.
Actually,
so this is what I want to focus in on. You said you could be not acting, and then something could drive you towards action. I want you to describe that state of not acting. Would it be something like, just slobbing around on the couch?
I just described it to you. Imagine a brain in a vat.
Okay, then, so you think there could be a brain in a vat, which then is driven towards growing a body and start acting?
I think that their experiences.
You think that could happen?
No.
So then you didn't describe it. I want you to describe in reality, something which could actually happen. A person, a non-actor, who experiences something which drives them towards acting.
Are you aware of why those are different questions, or do you not realize?
I don't realize. Go ahead and enlighten me.
Okay. So an experience can drive you towards action. It can be a driving experience, right? It can be a good experience when you'd want to happen, without your ability to actually fulfill that want, without you having any impact on the matter. You could want to do something without the ability to fulfill that want.
Mm-hmm.
Now you understand why it's different.
But to even want in the first place, you have to be acting.
No.
Yeah, you do. How could you want something without acting?
The brain in a vat example?
That's not a human, right?
If I was a human...
So that brain will never act. It's not an actor, so it's irrelevant.
It could be a human brain.
Okay.
A human brain is a human being, right?
Okay, right. I could go up to someone right now, cut their head off, and take their brain out. And then it's not an actor, right? It's not acting. It's never going to act.
Yeah, what's your point?
No, it's irrelevant for discussions of praxeology.
I'm not discussing praxeology.
Yes, you are. You're discussing action. You dumbass.
I'm discussing why I don't think... No, I'm discussing why utilitarianism is true.
Oh, no. We're talking about action. You were talking about that there is such a thing as being driven towards action. Right?
Yes. There are
so what is
driving towards the action which make you want them?
So where is an example of being driven towards action?
I've given you one.
Go on.
I've given you one several times. You keep forgetting it. It's the brain of the vat example.
That is not being driven towards action. Because we already discussed this. We already discussed this. This brain cannot be driven to action. This brain isn't going to grow a body and start acting.
Would I remind you of why you're wrong?
Go on.
Would you like me to remind you of the
argument
I gave you earlier? Is
go on.
Driven towards an action without the ability. Yeah, I'm doing it.
It's not being driven towards an action. It just has a want.
Stop spazzing.
It just has a want. It's not being driven towards action because there is no action it could take.
When I say
so how could you say it's being driven towards an action?
You're confused. When I say there is
projection.
You okay? Are you okay?
I'm perfectly fine.
So wait, when I say it's driving you towards action, I don't mean that it's the case that you're able to fulfill those wants. I mean that there are wants you have. There are things that would, if you could act, right, in the counterfactual where you could act, you would act on them in order to achieve things. There are wants you have, preferences you have. And there are experiences which drive you towards those. There are experiences which feel good, and there are experiences which feel bad. And experiences which feel good, you would like to achieve. Experiences feel bad, you would like to avoid.
So, I mean, right now I could make a computer program. I could whip it up real quick in, like, JavaScript or something, where I can give it a list of things, and it would sort them according to its preference. This isn't relevant in praxeology, right? It's not relevant when we're discussing action. We're not saying that, okay, I fed in cake and steak, and it chose steak over cake, so therefore it wants cake. Therefore it wants steak, sorry. It's being driven towards the action of steak. It's not. It's a computer program. It's not an actor. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I don't think a human brain is the same as a computer program. I think.
So you don't think a human brain is a computer?
I think the human brain is a computer. I don't think it's the same as a JavaScript program.
Why? What's the distinction?
Sure, I think that humans have the capacity for preference, and JavaScript programs do not.
I mean, this thing could spit out preferences for you.
It wouldn't be able to have experiences, right? So it wouldn't be able to have a true preference. It would just be able to say.
Okay, it could experience my inputs. It could experience my inputs.
You think computers can have experiences?
I could input data into it.
Well,
What's that? What makes that not an experience?
Well, so do you firsthand? You're not like a philosophical zombie, right? You know what feeling qualia is like, right? You know what it's like to feel experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you know that you can imagine a thing which is like a simulation of you, which looks to the outside world to be the same, but internally nothing is really going on, right? It's just like a computer program that's like taking the inputs and simulating your behaviors without having the qualia, without having the experiences, right?
No, I think if something could genuinely mimic a human, then it would be a human.
You think if it could mimic a human, it would be having experiences?
Yeah, necessarily, it would have to.
Do you think the GPT-3 has experiences?
In the sense that it's taking in data, like it's doing computation in the same way.
No, not in that sense. In the normal sense.
I don't think it's conscious, right? I don't think it's an actual actor. I don't think it's acting, but it is experiencing things.
It's not conscious, so it's not really experiencing anything, right? It's just pretending to experience, it's taking in inputs.
I mean, then what is consciousness?
Well, consciousness, I think, usually is meant to mean like you're experiencing the outside world in particular, right? You're not just experiencing something internal, but you have some contact with the outside world. Like, people who are asleep are experiencing a dream, and people who are awake are conscious.
But then you could hook up outside sensors to GPT-3, right?
You could hook up outside sensors, right? But that wouldn't make it conscious.
But then what would make it conscious?
Having experiences, and it doesn't truly have experiences. It's just like you don't think.
So what would make it have experiences? What does it mean to have experiences?
It does have sensors of the outside world, right? But it doesn't have true experiences. It doesn't have a consciousness. It doesn't have any experiences.
Okay, so it's having false experiences.
It's not having any experiences.
So, but then what does it mean to have experiences?
What it means to have experiences is based on I gave you the example earlier. I don't know how to explain other than this. You experienced qualia. You know what it's like to feel some way, right? You know what red is like, right? You can know that red also has the property of being this certain wavelength, right? You know, it's like the low energy, long wavelength, right? You know that like violet would be the high energy wavelength. But what it's like to see red, or what it's like to see the color violet, right, are different. The likeness of it, the quality of it, is different than just the data of it. There's something about
I think you're confused about how brains work. Like the quality of seeing red, that's just your brain processing like information going into your eyes. That's just brain processing it.
On my end. What did you say? What I was confused about in regards to how brains work. What did you say?
The quality of seeing red, like what that means to see red, that's just your brain processing shit. Your brain's just a big computer.
I agree that your brain is processing shit, and it is a computer, it's doing computations, but I think there's a certain kind of computation the brain does, right, that, say, for example, your computer is not doing, which is the experience of what it's like to feel some way. And me and you have first-hand knowledge of this, right? The best thing that you can have knowledge of, right, first-hand knowledge, in scare quotes, right, is we have qualia. The best thing that we have knowledge of is the fact that we have qualia. I think it's possibly the case that we're wrong about that, but we have first-hand experience of it. We know what it's like to experience qualia. We know what experiencing things is like. We know that a computer doesn't have any good reason. We don't have any good reason to believe that a computer has like a prefrontal cortex, for example, or the means and mechanisms through which it could experience qualia.
But I mean, then what is an experience if it's just taking in data and processing it? Like, because that is what it means to when I look at the red, right? I'm taking in data and processing it. What's different there from what a computer does?
Think about your own experience, right? You know what that's like. You know what it's like to have an experience.
Because I am a very complex computer.
Maybe a complex enough computer can do the task, right? A computer maybe could do the task of having experiences, in which case I would think it's worth, like, if we imagine a robot, right, that's able to feel pain or something, right? I think it's worth not making it suffer. But I think that the mere fact of tissue damage and being able to sense that is different from the experience itself of pain, of suffering, right?
Sure, I mean, Because
Probably the weakest line of attack against utilitarianism. I think the best line of attack is going to be the arguments for particular cases.
Huh?
Your audio cut out for me again. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm
you were.
having like, so it seems like on your end. Oh, now there's a delay. On your bottom left corner of your Discord window, do you see the 3 bars? You're having trouble connecting.
My one's fine.
Hello. Help. Okay, mine's fine too.
Hold on.
I guess one way.
You were cutting off a little bit there for me.
Out of the call. I'm gonna quickly jump out of the call and back into it and see if that fixes things. Okay.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Let's
Hello,
see if that's
huh?
better off. So, yeah, the strongest line of attack, right? And I'm giving this to you just for the fact that we can like have an interesting discussion. The strongest line of attack are going to be arguments about particular cases. They're going to be something like, I think it's the case that there are a lot of these intuitions we have about utilitarianism, right? Or about morals, which utilitarianism seems to not comply with, right? Specific cases where somebody could say something like, over here, it seems like our intuitions about what maximizes utility, right? Our knowledge about what maximizes utility is going to be different from our intuitions about what feels like the right thing to do, right? Those are the strongest arguments, I think. Rhetorically,
Sure. So we like a reductio ad absurdum or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple of them, so we could go over.
But before you do that, I want to actually tell you something, right? So we
All right.
both know that if what we're trying to capture with morals is what we have impartial reason to do, our intuitions could very well be wrong, just like they are about the other things that are about impartial reasons, like math, for example, right? In the case of math, our intuitions about things like the gambler's fallacy will not comply with the actual general rules. What we do is we throw out these intuitions about particular cases, and we go to the general rules instead. Morals are the only domain, it seems like, where people are willing to weigh their intuitions about particular cases even higher than our general principles, our bedrock principles about what ought be done and what ought not be done. And additionally, you, as somebody who believes in the NAP, you have bullets to bite as well. And so we should both be making this argument against particularism and in favor of generalism.
I just want to make sure that I've got you right, because I want to come back to this later. You think that it is possible for our intuitions to be wrong, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna put a pin in that one. We can come back to that in a bit because I've got something on it. But first, so let's say there's some child drowning in a lake. You're walking by. This is like the classic moral quandary. Do you have some moral duty to save that child?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Why is that?
All else equal, you do. Because it would maximize utility.
Okay. What about if the child was in Africa, and you could pay money to a charity to save them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is this the Peter Singer argument in favor of organizations like Give Well and Effective Altruism? Oh yeah, I just think you ought to. Yeah. So
you agree with the Peter Singer argument of you ought to help those children in Africa?
Yeah, I think that.
So then, how are you?
$30,000. Yeah.
How are you currently debating with me? Because I mean, if you have a PC that you're debating on, then you could sell that PC and give that money to charity, couldn't you?
I could sell the PC, or I could use the PC to make money, and then I could use the money that I made from the PC to give more to charity. I think that every dollar above $30,000 that I make will either go to some investment for some effective altruist purpose, or it'll just go directly to some charity like GiveWell or something.
Okay, so do you buy the absolute cheapest food you can to live?
No, I buy I think I buy mostly vegan foods. Usually those aren't too expensive. Those are pretty cheap compared to the alternative of eating food. But I think that the absolute cheapest foods you can get are not going to be the utility maximizing ones. If you want to maximize utility, you should probably get a food that's going to be healthy for you. And some amount of taste pleasure is good for you, for your psychology, right? So you can actually be motivated to do good things. If you torture yourself, it's not going to be great.
You got a pretty good mic there, bro. Why do you have a good mic?
My mic, so my mic in particular, the argument you're making wouldn't work here if it was actually the case that I bought it, but this one in particular was bought for me by a friend of mine. My friend Jim a while back bought me a microphone.
Then why don't you sell that and then buy a cheaper one?
Then why? The fact that I like the good. Well, firstly, it's a blue fucking snowball. I don't get cheaper than this. But I like the good audio.
Oh, they definitely do get cheaper.
I think the audio quality. There are ones that get cheaper than this. Like I could get a 5 fine or something. But a used blue snowball, I don't think is gonna go for enough to get me a good quality microphone. And I think that.
But why do you need a good quality microphone?
Talking to people, because of the fact that we're doing debates, right? If I'm doing debates, me having a good audio quality means that I'm gonna be more convincing to more people. It's weird how people's brains work like that, right? But you come off as more charismatic if your mic is higher quality.
Okay, what about like your monitor? Cheapest monitor you could get?
It is the cheapest monitor I can get, but I think I'd be justified in getting something better than this. I have one
Okay.
really big used TV monitor. I probably should have gotten something better.
Why should you get something better?
Because of the fact that if I got something better, it'd probably be better for my workflow, and that means I could make more money and just do more for people, and also I'd be more relaxed while doing it.
So how do you weigh that against, the children who are currently dying?
So I think it's about $30,000 at the minimum for the Helen Keller International to save a human life, and it's about $45,000 according to most of the other charities on GiveWell. So basically, just look at the amount of money spent on the monitor, and I can just see like, is this going to get me enough money to outweigh the money I could have gotten somewhere else, right? And I think in the monitor's case, right, it's easily the case with a computer monitor. I'm going to be making more than its value back. I have to have some kind of community monitor. This one I just bought off of Craigslist for like 20 bucks. So I don't know. I feel like it's a pretty good purchase. I don't think it's bad on utilitarian terms.
How much money are you making off your computer right now?
That's all my money coming off my computer because of the fact that I'm a web developer.
But how much?
That's a private matter. I wouldn't really like to discuss my personal finances with you.
Oh yeah, fair enough. We can go on to the next one then.
Cool.
So it's farming retarded people for organs, right? This was based on the truth utilitarianism, as you call it, like truth maximization. Retarded people, they don't really understand true things very much. So is it okay to farm them for organs for more intelligent people?
So I think that even people who are retarded can still live good lives, right? And they can live lives that are worth living. And I think that killing them for the lives of more intelligent people, it's not necessarily going to be the kind of thing that as a society we'd want perpetuated as a social rule. I think it would terrify most people if we were harvesting the organs. I think that even really intelligent people would feel really poor off if we were doing something like that. I think it would make all of our lives worse.
I think people can swallow a lot of very immoral things.
They can swallow some pretty immoral things, but that one seems pretty bad. I don't think I'd be able to swallow that.
Okay.
You'd be able to?
Oh, definitely not, because, I'm principled.
Well, I think my principle is maximizing utility. So I think that that's a good argument against the case of harvesting the organs of the mentally retarded. I don't think it's really a utility maximizing decision.
Here's a question for you. Have you read the book The Ones Who Walk Away from a Male Ass?
The Ones Who Walk Away from what?
A Male Ass. It's like a short story. It's not a full book.
M-A-L-E-A-S-S?
O-M... I'll type it.
Oh, Omelos. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
No, I have not read this book. I thought you were saying male ass, like the one that walks.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
But you're. I'll restate it for the audience. Like, I'm sure you're aware of the hypothetical there, where there is this society of unbelievable happiness. Everyone's glorious. Everyone loves life and everything. But when anyone turns 18, they find out the truth that this society is only kept in function because there is one child who is kept in perpetual filth, darkness, and misery. Right? There's tortured every day, all day. And there are some people who are principled. They walk away from male ass. They reject that this is how we should live. And everyone else, they stay around because they're like, well, this kind of weirds me out, but I guess, that's how it has to be. But then there's other people who just fuck off immediately. So would you walk away?
I think I would. I think that would displease me enough so I wouldn't want to be a part of that society. I think even if people felt happy, I think it would be the case that the displeasure caused to the people who know it would be so significant that I think would outweigh that. But what I'm curious about for your position, right? If you believe in the NAP, if it was the case that that one child was suffering in misery and all I had to do was like steal a penny from one person, do you think that it would be justified to do so?
No, don't steal.
Okay, so I couldn't steal a penny to save a million children being naturally held in forever misery.
You shouldn't steal a penny to save the entire planet Earth. Like if aliens came down, if aliens came down right now and said, "Hey, Sinthe, steal a penny right now and we won't kill Earth," you shouldn't do it.
You shouldn't do it.
You should not do it.
Okay. So I think that's a much harsher bullet to bite than what you presented any of these, what any bullet you presented for me. All I have to do to make a bullet for you is just take that and make it the natural course of things and say you have to steal one penny to stop it from happening. And it's like
but I have a foundation for what I say. Everything that you are saying, you're just like, well, I feel this way and that way and that way. I'm saying, right, no, I have this principle which I will stick to absolutely. the non-aggression principle, never aggress. I don't say, well, I feel like this would probably maximize utility, like, warping the ethic into what we feel, right? That's what you're doing. You're warping the ethic.
You're mistaken about my...
Absolutely
you're
not.
mistaken about my meta-ethic. Yeah, I could just explain why you're wrong. I'm not a subjectivist.
Go on.
I'm as close to a... Yeah, maybe there's an audio delay or something, because that sounded like a delayed come on. The meta-ethic that I believe in is basically as close as you can get to moral realism without believing that you can have claims about knowledge, right? I think that what is the truth of the matter about morals is something that we have impartial reason to do. I don't think it's the case that it's just our opinions about the matter. I think the best way we can know this, right, is to induct about things that we are fundamentally based on seemings, but I think you're doing the exact same thing. I think any claim, any time, as long as you actually believe it, will fundamentally come down to seemings. There's reasons why you believe it, causes why you believe it even. And I think that morals are actual facts of the matter, and I think morals are like math, right? I think they're like math and that they're outside of just our own personal judgments about the matter. I think they're about what is rational to do.
So do you not believe that there is such a thing as a synthetic a priori?
I'm not really sure what you're describing as a synthetic a priori. You mean like knowledge claims that exist before any deduction?
Yeah, so it's something where you're saying something about the real world, but you're doing it before you ever go out and test it in the real world.
I don't think there's a priori knowledge at all.
Oh, well, what about there will always be mutual profit in any voluntary trade?
Nope, I don't think that this is knowledge. I think that we have maybe good reason to believe this. If we use your definitions of profit or something, we could probably have good reason to believe it.
Let's think about the counterexample to this. Let's imagine what it would mean to negate this statement. It would mean that there could be some trade where there would be not mutual profit. There's only one-sided profit in a voluntary trade. But this would contradict with, wait a minute, both parties, they chose this trade. So, let's say a hot dog vendor who's selling hot dog for $5. I go up to this vendor, I trade $5 for this hot dog. I necessarily value the hot dog more than the $5, so I profit. And then we flip this around. The hot dog vendor necessarily values the $5 more than the hot dog. So what would it mean to voluntarily reduce your lot in life? That doesn't make any sense.
So here's the issue, is that sometimes people make decisions they believe are going to maximize their preferences, and they turn out to be wrong, right?
Sure, yeah, so I should be clear. I mean, ex ante. I missed out the ex ante part. So ex ante, there is mutual profit in every voluntary trade.
Okay, so I don't think it's the case that you know this for sure. I just think that maybe you have good reason.
What would the counterexample be, though?
Sure, so the counterexample could just be the case that, like, the laws of logic aren't as they seem to be.
Oh, so to make a counterexample, you have to throw out logic.
I think that if you're saying that you know logic, right, you know the laws of logic, I think that fundamentally all we're doing is resting upon an assumption here. I think I assume it too, right? We both assume them. But they're still assumptions, and we could be wrong about them.
Wow, yeah. This is always the case with my debates. They end up in denial of logic.
No, they don't. I agree with logic.
So you agree with logic. So therefore, ex ante, there is mutual profit in every voluntary trade. We know this.
Okay. Did you forget the argument you were trying to make? You're not trying to make the argument that I would agree with this. You're trying to make the argument that it's knowable. I'm telling you it's not knowable. I just believe it.
So, but then you do agree with it, right?
I do agree with it, yeah. But it's different.
Saying you don't reject it.
But it's different from it being knowable, right? You were trying to argue it's knowable.
Right, it is knowable because trying to reject it would be to fall into falsehood, right? You'd be contradicting yourself. You'd be insane, absurd.
So there's the audio delay's killing me. But just because of the fact that you think I would fall into falsehood or fall into absurdity, the only reason you think that makes something wrong is because it relies upon some other presupposition. The fact that you can have a long chain of presuppositions does not mean those chains of presuppositions are infinite. Eventually, there's some point at which they terminate. You can't escape Munchausen's trilemma. Is the case that either you're resting upon foundations, circularity, or some kind of infinite regression in hypothetical land or something, right? And none of these seem to be a thing which would make it for sure the case that you could not be wrong. It is possible that you are wrong.
It's not possible that you're wrong about, an axiom in the Austrian sense.
It is possible, right?
No.
What do you mean? Can I ask you what modality you're using the word possible in?
I don't know what you mean by that.
You don't know what I mean by what modality you're using possible, or just the word modality?
It's just, it's simply infeasible uncontestable that you could not deny an axiom without being false, in the Austrian sense of the word axiom.
So I'm not sure what you mean by false, then. That seems really strange. You could deny axioms all the. I mean, we deny axioms all the time and have like completely consistent systems of logic. I don't see why.
Not in the Austrian
the
sense.
axiom.
In the Austrian sense.
Oh well, I'm not using the Austrian sense.
But that's why I said every time after axiom, I said in the Austrian sense. Every time I said axiom there, I said in the Austrian sense. So in the Austrian sense, these axioms are necessarily true.
Relax. So you just don't have to melt down or anything. So in the case of the Austrian sense of these terms, right, that's different from like the actual sense in which I'm using them. I'm going to be using them in the normal English sense.
I brought it up.
The way that normal people use them.
I brought it up.
To my view that you can't have knowledge.
Yes. So in the Austrian sense, these axioms, we know them to be true.
I think that if you want to redefine every single word so that you can make
fucking hell, call them Austrian axioms.
Hold on.
Call them Austrianisms. So we know Austrianisms are true.
Stop. In the middle of a
right?
sentence.
Do we know Austrianisms are true?
Hold on, relax. Okay, the alcohol's getting
fucking
to you.
hell.
So what I'm saying is just that when it comes to knowledge, right? If something is possibly wrong, then it's not the case that you know it. If it's the case that this is possibly wrong, then you don't know it. You agree that if something could be possibly wrong, you don't know it, right? You can't know something that you could be wrong about.
Are Austrianisms possibly wrong?
These are assumptions. Yes.
Okay, right, that's where you're wrong. That's what I was trying to say.
Under what modality would that be wrong?
Austrianisms, they are in the act of even denying it, you presuppose it to be the case. So it's not possible that it's wrong. Okay. I don't care. So when you listen to what I'm saying, how about? So when you try to deny an Austrian axiom, an Austrianism, you necessarily presuppose it to be valid. So therefore, it's undeniably true. It's apodictically true, as Mises would say.
Mm-hmm. But just because something's undeniable doesn't mean that it's impossible, right?
It's impossible that it's false.
That's not true.
Yeah?
Some things could be undeniable, right, that are still possibly false.
Go on. Bring an example.
Yeah. So what I'm asking for when you said possible...
Bring an example. You said that something could be undeniable and also false.
I'm down to give you examples.
Go on.
I want you to answer I'm down to give you examples.
No. I asked first.
Stop.
Go on and give me an example.
You actually didn't ask first.
I did. Give me an example.
You asked for an example.
Give me an example.
Can you stop talking for a second?
Give me an example.
Can you stop talking for a second?
I'll stop talking when you give me an example.
I actually can't give you an example if you keep talking.
So you can't give me an example.
If you don't stop talking.
Give me an example.
I can't. You stop talking.
So you're going to give me an example right now.
I want to remind you, right, just really quickly, that I asked you what modality, and then after that, you asked me.
Are you going to give me an example of an undeniable false statement?
I'll give you an example the moment you answer my question. What are you typing?
Just a reminder that you need to give me an example of an undeniable false statement.
Yeah.
Give me it.
You can remind yourself of that.
Give me an example.
Why did you type yourself a reminder?
So that we make sure to stay on that point. So go on.
You haven't answered my question yet.
No, you didn't give a question. You didn't.
The question was, what's the modality for possibility here?
Yeah, I said, I don't know what the fuck you mean by that, and then I went to explain what I mean by Austrian axiom. And then we went into defining it as Austrianism.
And then you didn't answer. I asked you which part of that are you having trouble with, and you didn't answer.
Which part of what am I having trouble with?
You said you didn't understand that. I'm asking you which part of that was hard to understand.
Of what?
I asked you, is it just the modality, right? If so, I can define that for you.
Right. Go on.
Okay. So the definition of modality, just when we say like something is possible, we're baking a lot into it. We're talking about, okay, is this physically possible, right? Is it something I can do morally, right? Is it something that I can do morally? Is it the case that it's something that I can do logically? Or
so logically,
is it something that I could do extendedly, right? So before logic, is there something that, like, without assuming logic, is it possibly false?
What do you mean without assuming that makes no sense. There is no such thing as false without logic.
There certainly is.
Oh, false?
Yeah, truth and you don't think that you don't think that truth makers can exist outside of like the laws of non-contradiction, identity, and the excluded middle?
I deny that. Yes.
Okay, why?
I mean, to even say something is true or false, you have to presuppose logic as valid.
Why?
Go on and give me a counterexample.
I don't need to. You have to give me why.
I don't care, actually. So we're going to go into the example of undeniable false statement.
So you don't have a reason? Can we just be clear about that? You had no reason.
I do have a reason. It's when you, for the law of non-contradiction, let's say, to even argue in the first place, you have to be denying it. And to deny something, you have to presuppose that the law of non-contradiction is valid. So it's the argument from argument.
Why does that make it? Why does that?
So to even begin a deliberation by anything, you have to presuppose the laws of logic. And by the way, I'm very glad that you are such a fan of the laws of logic.
I am. I'm just asking you why is the case?
Yeah, great. So we agree on the laws of logic.
Because you need something.
Great.
Sorry,
So let's move forward.
Yeah, hold on. So but we don't agree on whether or not you know them, right? This is what we dispute, right? So.
I'm such a fan that you know the laws of logic. I love that you know the laws of logic to be true.
I'm trying to have a conversation with you, but it's impossible because you won't let me finish that.
I just love that you know the laws of logic to be true.
Well, can I ask you what your goal in this conversation is?
I'm just saying that I love that you know that the laws of logic are true.
Could you answer what your goal is in the
I just love that you know that the laws of logic are true.
Okay. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I just love that you know that the laws of logic are true. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I love you, buddy. You're a great guy. And I'm sure that one day you'll get yourself into a 12-step program and you'll be able to do debates without being so fucking hammered.
I mean, hammered or not, I still beat you the fuck up.
You actually think you did well?
Yeah.
Holy shit. All right. I don't know. Ask your audience if they think you did well.
Sure.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Can you give me an example of an undeniable false statement?
Sure. An undeniable statement which is possibly false was what we asked for, right?
Go on.
Yeah, okay. So any statement, right, which is undeniable is a statement which is undeniable but possibly false. So, for example, it'd be very undeniable for me to doubt that I think, right? It's very undeniable. It's hard for me to deny that, right? Impossible even under the within the scope of the laws of physics for me to deny it. However, it's the case that could be possibly false, right? I know that you probably couldn't deny that you think, but it's certainly the case that you don't think.
Very funny, but can you actually give it a real response?
That was a real response. I just insulted you at the end.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a real response.
That's the thing which is undeniable, but possibly false.
No, it's necessarily true. If it's undeniable, it's necessarily true.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not what that word means.
If you cannot deny it, it's necessarily the case.
Let's imagine that I have a weird psychological disposition where I can't deny some like delusion. Like I can't deny, for example, the fact that I'm is like actually dead, not really alive or something. Right?
So you're a rock.
Let's deny Let's imagine I have something like
That's what it would mean.
Right?
If you couldn't deny anything, you couldn't do anything.
You're confused about the hypothetical.
I'm not.
Extremely.
False.
Okay, so you know what Coder's syndrome is, or Coder's delusion?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll just go through it, right? So the idea is basically somebody has the delusion that they're actually dead, right? There are people who, for them, it would be undeniable because of their psychological dispositions. They just couldn't deny the fact of the matter that they're dead. However, they're wrong about it. So just because it's undeniable doesn't mean that it's impossible.
No. They could consistently deny that they are not dead. They could consistently deny that they are in fact dead. They could deny that. That is logically consistent. That's what I mean. It's not that I mean that they could physically conjure themselves emotionally to believe that they are in fact alive. I mean that they could consistently state that they are in fact alive. They could state that they are alive. That is what I mean by undeniable. I mean logically.
Have you ever played like whack-a-mole? You like hit one thing down and like 3 pop up. That's what just happened to you, right? So you've just like
false. No, that's what I always meant by undeniable.
Now you're in.
That's what I always meant by undeniable. Just because you're retarded, it doesn't change it.
Stop melting down. Stop having a.
It doesn't. Yeah, you're mad, bro. Jesus fucking Christ.
You won't stop interrupting me. So just because you think it's the matter, right? So in the case specifically of, say, for example, the examples you gave earlier of like denying the law of non-contradiction. is not the case that you necessarily form a contradiction. You think there's a contradiction, a performative contradiction, right? So in other words, you think you're being a hypocrite. But it's not necessarily the case that they assert P and not P. If you think so, then I just want you to put it in the form of P and not P. Put it in the form of P and not P then.
What?
Put it in the form of P and not P.
Okay, proposition. I am not alive. Negation of P. I am alive. They have to assert these both things if they are to assert I am not alive.
Sorry, you were supposed to be doing that for the law of non-contradiction.
Okay, so for the law of non-contradiction, if we assume, Jack and Jane are arguing, Jack says A is the case. Jane says, no, not A is the case, i.e. A is not the case. That's what it means to have an argument, right?
No.
So you don't think that... What do you think an argument is?
A set of propositions which come to some conclusion.
But for Jane to be responding to Jack, she has to negate what Jack is saying, or else it's not a response to Jack.
No, that's not true at all. Plenty of the times you're not negating what somebody is saying and you're still responding to them.
What do you think it means to respond to someone?
Here's an
if you think they are correct.
I think that can I finish my sentence without you being a spastic?
I fucking hate you.
So, yeah, good, you should. So in the case of somebody who says something like, I think that Obama was a good president. Somebody could be like, yes, I agree. I think here are some reasons why Obama was a good president. They would be responding to the first person, but they wouldn't be arguing or even disagreeing with the first person or contradicting.
Right, so they're not arguing with that person. So for it to be an argument, they have to be negating it.
They're
right?
Not. We were talking about
so
responding.
For it to be an argument, you said, oh no, you can still argue against them. For it to be an argument, they have to be negating it, right?
Oh, sorry, you're confused.
I'm not. For it to be an argument, it has to be a negation, right?
Yeah,
for them to deny,
can I go ahead and finish my sentence?
For them to deny what the other person is saying, they are arguing. For them to argue against it, they have to negate it.
Now you flipped it.
I haven't flipped anything.
You flipped it.
False.
Can I go ahead and explain to you why you're wrong?
Go on.
I'd love to. So, to argue can be the case that you're not necessarily disagreeing with somebody, but instead you could also be like a set of propositions that come to some conclusion. It could be an argument, right? I can give you an argument for a position without you disagreeing with me on it. I can get plenty of the time. I'll give people arguments in favor of my positions, and they're not really debating me or arguing against it. I'm just saying, like, here are the reasons why the thing that I believe is true. And they'll be like, yes, it's a good reason.
Right.
I know that you haven't.
And then if I were to argue against you, I would have to negate it, wouldn't I?
If you were to argue against me, but that's not what we said.
Right, if you were to even argue A, right, you'd have to necessarily say that, well, no, not A can't also be the case.
You going somewhere with that?
Do you agree with that?
Do I agree with what?
That if you were to argue, if you were to argue A, if it's to even be an argument in the first place, not A can't also be the case. You have to presuppose that.
Not necessarily. So I presuppose it, right? But it's not the case that somebody argues the law of non-contradiction.
So how could somebody consistently argue that A and not A are the case? How could they do that?
They could just be a trivialist.
I mean, you know what consistent means? Consistency means non-contradiction. That's what it means. So you cannot consistently argue contradictions.
So consistency just means there's not like some arbitrarity anywhere, right? So in the case
that's false. Consistency means non-contradiction. You're just wrong. You're just wrong. Go on.
So I just looked it up. The word contradiction shows up no times. You want to go look it up on Google?
Logical coherence.
Yes?
I've just looked it up. What do you think logical coherence means?
It means it coheres with some system of logic. It doesn't mean that it coheres with the three laws of the three classical laws of logic. There are other systems of logic, dummy.
It's incoherent to say a contradiction.
So it can be coherent within some other system of logic.
What do you think? You have some made-up system of logic, and that's just valid?
I think that there are plenty of systems of logic which are valid, right? They don't contain...
Well, no. Because these systems contradict each other.
They don't... Yeah,
They
the systems
contradict each other.
That's not what valid means.
So there has to only be one valid system.
No, that's not what valid means.
Whoa.
Did you
So
mean
you
one sound system?
so you think they're all equally valid? You can just pick between them. It doesn't matter. Is that what you think?
So I'm gonna type it out for you. Okay, and I'll let you read this, and then I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me if this is if this these two arguments are both valid, and I also want you to tell me if these two arguments both contradict.
I mean, I'm not seeing anything.
That's argument one. You see that right there?
P implies Q, P therefore Q. Yep.
There we go. Those two arguments contradict, right?
Only if we assume that the P and Q are consistent across both of them.
We're assuming that. These two arguments contradict, right?
Hmm?
Are both of the arguments valid?
They follow, yes, but I don't think you understand what I meant by valid.
Well, I think you were misusing the term valid, and you can.
I don't fucking give a shit, cunt.
I'm not gonna lie. It's the most fun of debate I've had in at least the last year.
Well, I am known as quite a fun guy. I mean, you already titled our first debate, faggot, retard, ancap, or whatever.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't think I had any slurs in the title.
It was something like that.
I think that what you're thinking of is that time that you screamed slurs at me in a Discord VC.
Nah, it was something real mean.
I think you were thinking of when you screamed the N-word.
That was funny.
All
That
right.
was funny.
I'm not gonna lie. Credit where it's due. That was pretty funny.
See, I am a comedian. That's what I do.
That's what you do. I don't know. I enjoyed the conversation. If there's anything else you want to talk about at any other time, maybe you want to run argumentation ethics or something, let me know. We can do that now if you want, but I have had you here for about an hour and 17 minutes, so I don't want to waste too much of your time.
Well, I do kind of want to take a piss soon-ish.
Yeah, I know. All right. I know. Oh man, you could have got me there. If I didn't notice I said that first, you could have destroyed me. I said I knew that you were gonna take a piss.
Ah, see?
Haha.
Haha.
But I took it back too quick. I got to it first. All right. You peace out. You have a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, no knowledge means falsehood. So,